All right, welcome everyone. I'm here with my special guest tonight. I guess it's early morning where Simon, or I think it's in German, it's Simon, but uh, it's early morning over there in Germany. But he, I'm assuming he top for the Eternal Weekend in Prague this past weekend, and we're gonna go over some pre-tournament uh, and tournament play, and then post tournament on his thoughts. And without further ado, actually, before I even get to that, Simon top four, but I also want to highlight that Roberto, uh, hopefully I'm pronouncing their last name correctly, Pizzuto, also top 16, finishing 13th at 8-2. So congratulations to both of them for the excellent run at Eternal Weekend Prague. So welcome, Simon.
Good morning or good evening, wherever you are.
I'm glad you can join me today. I haven't done something like this in a while where I had somebody on, but for those who are tuning in, I prepared a set of 10 questions for Simon ahead of time, and I think the format we're going to use is we're just going to go briefly. It doesn't have to be in order, too, and we'll give Twitch chat a chance to ask Simon questions, but we're going to go over these questions that he's already answered, and I took a look at his answers, but he can probably elaborate. I have some follow-up questions as well. But before we get started, Simon, if you want, please talk or give a brief history on yourself and your what you do, or like whatever you feel like talking about with your background, whether that be magic or whatnot.
So yeah, maybe short about my Magic background. I'm playing Magic for like 18 years now, so it's been a long time. So in my youth, I spent pretty much all my time flipping cards. Um, Now I'm a bit older. I don't have quite as much time to play Magic. So I only play irregularly, I would say, but I started playing Legacy and buying Legacy cards like 6 years ago, and then I play the occasional tournament like maybe every 3 months or so, or meet up at some times with some friends to play. It's been, I guess you could say I don't have as much time, and my friends neither, to play some Magic, and Legacy events are always rare to play. And since I'm not quite the biggest fan of playing Magic online, I want to interact with the people I play with. I think that's half of the fun of playing Magic is sitting with your friends or some other dudes and talking something about it and play Magic on the side. So yeah, I don't get to play as much as I would like to, but I still enjoy playing it, and especially big tournaments. It's always very fun to go to a road trip, to travel to Prague. Prague is always an amazing city to travel. It's quite cheap and it's not very far for me, and the people are amazing there. So yes, and it was the first tournament since Corona. So I'm very happy about it. Maybe something else. I work in IT. I studied mathematics on a bachelor. I don't think that's very interesting for our viewers, but here you go, I guess.
No, no, I love the detail that you gave there, Simon. I mean, I studied engineering as well, so I can appreciate your interest in mathematics. Also, I think I can speak on behalf of at least the majority of Magic players who talk about how the card game is called Magic the Gathering, but it's really the Gathering that people really value. I'm curious, who did you go to the event with? Anybody? If you don't want to say, that's okay too.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think any one of you will recognize them, though. They're um, three German people. So Jan, who is a long time Magic friend, who I
Mhm.
played with like for 14 years or maybe longer. Then Toby, who is a friend of him, who always comes with the trips to Prague, and
Mhm.
Steffi, who we know from our local legacy group, like which played like 5 or 6 years ago, and then Never saw her again, but I met her two weeks ago at the local legacy tournament, and she needed a ride and somewhere to stay. And since our other guy didn't come, we asked her to join, so
Gotcha.
she was with us.
I mean, it sounded like it was a full, you know, a full group there. Well, when I say full, I mean, did you say you flew or drove?
No. We drove by car. It's like 3.5 hours for us, so it's
Gotcha.
not a
Okay. So
very
yeah,
long
full
car ride.
car
It's
there is what I meant to say. So,
hmm?
I guess you already answered. I apologize. I know you already answered these via your Word document that you sent me, but if you could, can you briefly talk about? I think you already kind of hinted at it. You said you haven't played Magic Online much because that's not just what you enjoy, but and then obviously because since the pandemic, you haven't been to a big event since prior. Can you talk a little bit about the practice that went into it or lack thereof? And
So,
speak
so
further to that.
I haven't done very much practice. I always watch your, or what, when I see you, the videos of your stream pop up, and I'm always interested in seeing the deck list
Oh, I
and
appreciate that.
watching one or two matches. Um, so I got the list like I think it's 3 weeks ago from you. So I didn't do very much innovating myself, and then I played the legacy event 2 weeks ago. It was 5 rounds in Nuremberg. I
Hmm.
went 3-2, and that's pretty much all the practice I got in recent times. So I guess I was at one or two earlier events this year, but this was before I even knew about the Eternal Weekend. So I guess I haven't done very much practice. I would say I consider myself a good generalist Magic player. So I think I'm quite adept at picking up good plays most of the time, but I'm not a specialist who knows every matchup and every play to make in and out for a deck because I don't play as much anymore.
That's a really good answer. And actually, my follow up to that, I guess, was yeah. Actually, I kind of assume. Did you draft a lot before? Because from what I can tell, I don't think it sounded like you didn't play too much leading into. So I kind of assumed that your heuristics were good from either draft or playing standard. And also, did you ever play combo elves? I guess that's another question that's kind of related, right?
Um, yes, so I in my youth I drafted a lot. So I when I was 16 I was drafting like I think like 40 FNMs a year.
Hmm.
So pretty much every week.
Right.
Um, and I played a lot of standard, a lot of tournaments in my earlier Magic days. So combo elves, yeah, I played as well. I'm not quite sure if I played the extended version when it was played in Berlin. I think I tried even that extended combo elves.
Mm-hmm.
And then before I played, so I when Corona hit, I thought, oh, elves always looked like a nice deck to play, and then I went and bought the Cradle before they got as expensive as they were right now, and then I started playing combo elves, but I guess I followed the transformation from the deck. So first the reclaimers who replaced the nettle sentinels,
Uh-huh.
then the glimpse of nature and into the fiend artisan, and then the full transformation away from elves. So
So
yeah.
So it sounded like you maybe didn't play, but you were kind of keeping track of the changes.
Yeah, I'm always in contact with magic content. It's like I never can get away from it so much.
No, that's really cool to hear that. And I think that kind of speaks to your probably strengths then, because even though you didn't get the reps in necessarily, your familiarity with just combat and just normal Magic gameplay from either standard or limited, I think probably helped you a lot during the event. Just from as long as they weren't very specialized matchups. I think I saw one of your only loss was to in the Swiss was to Doomsday, and again that's more of a specialized matchup, I guess, if you want to talk about that. There's very specific
Yeah,
things.
sure, I can talk about it. So game one, I guess I kept a hand without the endurance. I didn't know what I played against, and
Uh
he
huh.
he went to combo with no backup. And if I had the endurance, I would have won game one, but I didn't have it. So
Hmm.
there you go. This was not very interesting. Then the second game, I played against Opposition Agent and Sheldred,
Oof.
which was a bit strange for me. I mean, understand Opposition Agent. It's
Right.
like the best card against the Cradle deck, I think.
I think so too.
But but Sheldred, I don't think is very good in the matchup. So it's okay. It's trades against an artisan, I guess, or gets killed by Grist. I don't draw any cards, and
Hmm.
I didn't quite get it. And the last game, had the decision after a mulligan. I had a
Hmm.
good hand with two endurances and a grist, and I had the decision to bottom the grist or my second endurance. I decided to bottom the second endurance because I thought, oh, if he has opposition agent, I have to handle it.
Right.
And turns out I just would have needed the second endurance for his second oracle to win the game, but I guess that's magic. That's what I wouldn't consider that a bad play. I
Right.
think
Right.
that's a judgment call. Maybe it was wrong, but it's always hard to know with those mulligans decisions.
Hmm. I think while we're on the topic, something that I saw from your report, and I guess it makes a lot of sense now. Did you bring in Grist because you saw the opposition agent? Because normally in a combo matchup, I don't think I would bring it in, but I'm guessing just from your heuristics throughout the year, is that what you did, or can you
I
go
didn't
through?
take it out, so I have two mains. I don't have one in sideboard, but I
Mhm.
didn't board it out. So I'm not quite sure what I did board, to be honest,
No
since I
worries, no
don't
worries.
have a sideboard plan, and it was maybe I bought it out one, but I for sure kept one in the deck,
Hmm.
especially after game two, I think, because there's no other way to handle the opposition agent, and there are games you just can't do anything when it's on board. So it's like,
No, no,
so
we've all been there. Who anybody who's played some of these green decks, and it's not even just our deck, but in general, green decks and combo if the game goes late has problems with dealing with opposition agent. Um, can you briefly talk about I guess your event? What were you? I think you were just hoping to have a good time based on what the feel I'm getting, right?
yeah. I just wanted to have a fun with trip with my friends, and these trips are always fun. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like the real prizes are always the friends you make along the way, I guess.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
So
Did
maybe there are some prizes in addition to that.
did you meet
So
up? Oh, sorry, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
um, my experience was it was amazing to play against so many different decks. That's always the most fun part about Legacy because everyone just brings whatever decks they love the most.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I played against Burn, which is like the tradition in Legacy. You always play round one against Burn. That's a cliche, I guess, but
Uh-huh.
I found it funny. Then I played Stifle Nords, um, Slivers, which I totally didn't expect to see, but was always uh, um, happy. The only matchup I played multiple times was Initiative,
Mm-hmm.
and it also was amazing to see that the players were from all around Europe. So every legacy player in Europe, it seems, just went to Prague to play the event. So
Mm-hmm.
in my prior events in Prague, it was always like two-thirds German dudes and very few people from elsewhere. But this weekend it was just much more people from everywhere around Europe playing every deck you can imagine. It was awesome.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think I saw. Yeah, in your report you mentioned initiative was the only one you played twice, and everything else was only one time. That's pretty amazing considering you played a total of 12 rounds. Um,
So
I don't.
initiative was three times. It was
Oh, it's 3 times. Okay.
like two rounds in the Swiss, and the quarterfinals were against initiative.
Hmm. So I guess now let's go ahead. I think probably the people on the Twitch chat probably care the most about is the deck construction. I think for me personally, deck construction starts with the mana base. For me personally, I don't know how you feel. I think because you draft a lot, you might be on the same page. I'm not sure. Can you talk a little bit about how did the mana start for you or feel?
So I was quite happy with the mana base. So I don't think you could cut a land from the mana base. So maybe you could switch out a fetch land, but I had some games where I was screwed on black mana.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you should cut a fetch land. So it was 9 fetch lands, I guess. 2 Bayous, 2 forests, 2 Dried Arbors, a Place of Cradles, a Layout the Hydra, and the Bojuka Bog. So I think the land base as is, maybe you could play another land, I guess. The Chromox felt alright, but I was happy just playing the one off. I had in the past had situations where it was very awkward to have the Chromox in hand,
Mm-hmm.
and with this deck, I think it's sometimes a toss up where it's like you rather have the card in hand than the extra mana.
Right.
And sometimes it's also very hard to decide which card to pitch because you pretty much need all your cards. That's why was that's because that's why I was happy to only play one. And the Elvish Spirit Guide, I guess I had some with me, and I was like, I don't want to play 2 Chromoxes because, especially, you never want to draw 2 Chromoxes
Right.
because they don't interact with each other, and it's always horrible. And that's the reason I played the Elvish Spirit Guide. The reasoning is if I have both in hand, I can just pitch the Spirit Guide into the Mox, no harm done. Um, Also, sometimes it's enough to have the one mana in. You don't need it any longer afterwards. So if you have like a hand, I had one game where I just had 2 Hierarchs, land, and the Elvish Spirit Guide. I played land, pitched, and had 2 Hierarchs turn one. So it felt like a Mox anyway,
Right.
and was great, and only cost me the one card in hand.
No.
And I guess you can take it with Once Upon a Time, with which also is a bit of an upside. It didn't come up from me, but I guess that could be important.
No, that all makes sense. And I actually tried your exact mana base online with one additional fetch last night, and it actually felt pretty good. I agree. I don't. I think probably what you have is the bare minimum. If you were to play, let's just say, an event tomorrow, would you keep this exact mana base, namely, the 21 lands, the three Once Upon a Time? I count that as part of the mana base. Um, the one Chrome Mox or one Spirit Guide, or would you play? Would you? I guess the more thing I want to focus on is, did you like the Chrome Mox and the Spirit Guide, or would you just play extra lands going forward?
Um, I think I would play it again, like it is. It's always. I mean, I guess with the one-offs, it's always a bit random when you draw it. But the Chromox came in clutch in some situations. In the 10th round against Reanimator, for example, my opponent revealed 2 Chancellors of the Annex turn one, and I had the Chromox, and it felt great to just, oh yeah, just let it counter, and I can play my game as usual afterwards. And another round where I was opposition agent turn one in response to fetching. I had the Chromox, which allowed me to keep playing the game. I would have lost this game for sure otherwise. I still don't know how I won this game, but I guess the reason was my opponent attacked in my endurance, which came from the top. So that's the reason why I won. Um, yeah, but I think Chromox has enough upside so that playing one is very reasonable. And same goes for the Elvish Spirit Guide, I guess. I would keep the mana base as is. An additional mana source I wouldn't play in the deck, so I wouldn't play the two and more lands, I guess.
Hmm.
I think a strength of the deck is that it top decks pretty well.
Hmm.
And if you play more lands, it makes your top decks a bit worse, and I don't want to get flooded as much.
Right, right. Well, yeah, 23 has felt kind of like the sweet spot where you feel safe about the man, especially with, it. in a Chrome Mox and ESG build. So 23 sources has felt like kind of the sweet spot personally as well. Um, for in case you're curious, I asked Roberto the same thing, and he played the more standard mana base, but he said he would probably play two Boseiju going forward without the Chrome Mox and without the ESG, which are more aggressive in speed, but loses a little bit of resiliency, I guess.
Yeah, but so I had so the deck had Boseiju in earlier iterations
Uh
in
huh.
it, and when I played, it was always like I felt it almost never comes up when you want to Boseiju. So even when there's a problematic permanent,
Uh huh.
it's very awkward. You lose one land, and your opponent gets an additional land. It
Right.
always felt like a losing trade. I think if there's a really problematic permanent for you, maybe it could be good. Something like a glacial chasm,
Uh huh.
or to screw up a dark depths combo. But even then, to interrupt dark depths, you have to keep the mana up always, and I guess it's rare your opponent has to make a mistake, I guess,
Right.
for
Right.
you to realistically be able to do that. Or it has to come very late where you can keep the 2 mana up all the time, which I don't think is quite realistic. So I'm not the biggest fan of Boseiju in the deck, and it you also can search it. Also, you can search it with Average Reclaimer, but it's really useless to do. So there is there's no extra utility you get from playing like one off. So I'm not the biggest fan, I have to say.
So at least on that, I think we agree. My list. I think you watched my streams. I have not played Beseju on stream in quite a while because I share everything you just said right now. I kind of share the same feelings where you, even when it's relevant and most of the time it's not. It's just most of the time it's just a bad land. But even when it's relevant, it feels bad to trade down on mana. Is my personal take on that
Yeah, yeah,
argument.
correct.
So I guess the next thing is, and we'll bring up your
I'm
response.
I have a short question for you because I've seen
Sure.
you just put in the gemstone caverns in the list,
Uh huh.
in your newest list, and I'm very skeptical about that because I think it is horrible to have a land that doesn't tap for green mana. So, do you have good experiences with the gemstone cavern, or is this just experimental as of now?
So I think the gemstone list is one iteration behind what I'm currently was testing, but it is in some ways better and worse than Chromox because obviously when you're on the draw, it's better because pitching a land is pretty relevant. But it's it, I think if it were me, I would probably try a split. Like I ended up with a split of Chromox, one Chromox and one Gemstone Caverns, um, because especially drawing two Gemstone Caverns on the draw,
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
play is just horrendous. So I think I like the 1-1 split, and which is similar to your thinking of one Mox, one ESG for the same reason why you never really want to draw two.
Yeah, I always have the feeling Gemstone Cavern is only really good in decks that can use the colorless mana good, and I don't think that's the case for this deck. So, like I said,
I think
I'm
that
skeptical about it, but I'm happy to be proven wrong, I guess.
I I found that it really depends on your land count, but there is a lot of truth to what you just said, and that's why I when I tried two, I ended up with just one and one each. But the same logic is between
Yeah,
Mox and
sure. If you have
ESG.
both, it's much better because you just pitch the mocks into the Gemstone Caverns and don't worry about it.
Right. The worst case scenario is when you're on the play and then you draw both. Then you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
actually.
Then
Then,
you're screwed.
yeah, then you're kind of screwed because you can't pitch the Mox to the caverns. But then I can go into. I kind of went into this a little bit on my Patreon, but long story short, it causes you to like board out the caverns for like a cabal pit or something in the sideboard because at least you have another black source, right?
Yeah, sure. Sure. I mean, after sideboarding, you at least know if you're on the play or on the draw. So,
Right.
yeah. So in modern, the same logic applies. I play hardened scales in modern, which plays one main and one sideboard, and you always board it in. But the deck can use the colorless mana much better, I guess, than the
Yeah, we
elf
don't
deck
use
or the
colorless
green
mana
deck.
very well at all, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I guess similarly, and also for anybody on Twitch chat who's curious, feel free to jump in with any questions if you want. But otherwise, we're gonna plug along. What card or cards were you most impressed with? And I think I saw you mention Query Ranger.
Yeah, Query Ranger was really amazing the whole tournament for me. So I've seen you cut it in your newer lists, and I
Mhm.
think it's pretty insane to do after playing my tournament because it was an all-star or tournament. So the most common thing is just if you are in a matchup where you just go for the artisan beatdowns. This was like the number one game plan for me, I guess, this weekend.
Mhm.
Just have an artisan, fetch the other artisans, and have the biggest board with like
What
two or three
matchups were this?
artisans.
Just curious.
Um, Sorry, I didn't
What
catch it.
matchups did this come up the most that you really?
Like initiative
Mhm.
against slivers. I think it's all creature decks, which don't have like some trump against you. Like initiative is when you are able to amass a board, they're pretty screwed, and I guess you have taken back the initiative. That's also the key of course.
Right.
But then you just can win the game slowly with amassing a bigger board each turn, and at some point you just kill them. And in these kinds of matchups, I feel Queen Ranger is key because it allows you to have vigilance with your creatures. So you can search one, untap, attack, and in their turn also untap and block. It's really important against this.
Mhm.
Then it's obviously very good screw protection because if you don't have a land drop, Queen Ranger is just a Soul Ring.
Mhm.
Of course, you need a Dryad or an Hierarch for that to do.
Right.
And then there's a lot of extra utility. I mean, I won a game against Back to Basics where I top decked the Korean Ranger to untap my Dryad, which allowed for a lethal attack. It was awesome. It also, to be fair, was a misplay from my opponent that allowed this. He should have just played the chase and bounced one of my creatures instead
Uh-huh.
of going for the back to basics. But I guess that's magic. And against Price of Progress, it also was relevant because I played against Burn, where I fetched out the Korean Ranger to ensure I don't have too many non-basics on the board. So it's a lot of utility it provides. Also very relevant.
Mhm.
I don't think it came up this tournament, but just the play of having a jump blocking Dried Arbor and bouncing it every turn
Mhm.
is also a very relevant play in my opinion. So I wouldn't cut the Quillen Ranger. I'd much rather cut the Allosaurus Shepherd, which I don't advise you do, but I think it's less important than the Quillen Ranger in my opinion. But I probably would just play both.
No, that's fair. I definitely can appreciate the raising of the floor that Queen Ranger does for the deck. Specifically the Soul Ring mode that you mentioned, where if you're missing a land drop, you can still generate 2 mana. So that is to me the biggest reason to play Queen Ranger. But some of the other utility you mentioned, I'm glad that came up for you during the event.
Yeah, it's like the card with the most utility in the whole deck, I feel. So except for Green Sun Zenith, because Green Sun Zenith, of course, is like Fear and Ranger, and then 6,000 other things.
So I think so. Starting from this section, deck building on, I think I'm gonna compare your response to Roberto's response, and then if you want, you can chime in on what he said. If not, we can always just move on to the next question. No big deal. So Roberto actually said he said all the free spells were what he thought were the best cards. So Snuff Out, Endurance. He played two Force of Vigor. I think you played two Force of
I
Vigor as
have
well.
to as well, so yeah.
Any comment on that, or you kind of agree or
I
disagree?
agree. I agree that Snuff Out is pretty much the most important sideboard card for the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then the endurances are obviously amazing.
Hmm.
It's like the the much needed interaction mono green decks needed to play main deck. So in the past we never had any instant speed interaction,
Yeah.
and if our opponent did anything, we were kind of screwed if they were reanimator turn one, and now they have to worry about us having the endurance. And it's also a very good fair creature. So I think endurance is an amazing card design because it's only unfair if your opponent does unfair stuff, and if he
Right.
does fair stuff, it's a very good fair card as well.
Yeah.
And the Force of Vigor also were very good in the sideboard. I didn't bring them in very much, but there were situations where they were very relevant. So yeah, I would also play the 10 of them for sure again.
Yeah. I think most people are realizing that yeah, endurance is the closest thing we've ever had to a green force of will, and I think Roberto actually only played three, and he said his regret was not registering the fourth main deck. So I think you and him are both on the same page of four endurance main, four snuff out sideboard. I think it's the best sideboard card we have, better than Thoughtseize, and then obviously the force of vigor as well.
Yes.
Okay, so I think the next question is, what cards were you the least impressed with? It sounds like it's a Traxa of all the cards.
Yeah, I say it's Atraxa. I guess it will be a controversial opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the whole tournament, I only searched for Atraxa a single time. That was when against the Mono Black scam, or I think it was registered as Mono Black aggro, but same. It's like these Mono Black decks that are kind of reanimator, kind of aggro, and have grief. There it was very good. In most other matches, I think I always thought I don't want to search for it if my opponent has an out to it, and I knew most decks have an out to bounce or remove it, and I'd much rather just wait another turn and then go directly for the kill with the creative behemoth.
Okay, so
Um,
oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish.
so like against initiative, I didn't like going for it because I know they play solitude. And yeah, I guess that's the reason I always was very careful not to lose the game with getting an attractor, which then gets removed. So in my mirror match against elves, for example, you see both both games. My opponent searched for an attractor with natural order, which I responded to with a natural order for creator of the next turn. First game, I directly killed them. Second game, I brought them to 5, and then the game was a bit drawn out, but I eventually won it.
Mm-hmm.
I think I am when I think about how the tutor targets were, there always was the option to just play two Kratos, but I guess I would still play the Atraxa. I think it probably was just an anomaly for me, not needing it as much as
Mm-hmm.
I think when if the matchups were different and my draws were a bit different, it could have gone the other way and Atraxa would have been an all-star. So I would just consider this an anomaly and I wouldn't cut the Atraxa from the deck, but for me it was honestly the most unimpressive card the tournament.
So I think.
Also, you.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, just quick. Um, it can be a bit of a weak spot for the deck if you expect to play a lot against like um, Mono Black Scam or a Reanimator, which can discard it turn one and then you and then reanimate it. That's maybe a small thing to note, but not really relevant because you most of the time just want to mulligan if you have it on your starting hand.
Right. No, that's very fair. I've definitely had my own Atraxa, either killed or discarded or and then reanimated out of some other deck, right? Either scam or reanimator. I think this is the question that I think I already know the answer, but I'll allow you to respond. But when I saw that you put Atraxa, the first thing that came to my mind was I wonder if Simon has had bad experiences with losing with Atraxa, or it's just or just the reps are low where you just are playing around removal. Because my experience with Atraxa is even in the face of a known Caracas, I will still go for Atraxa because I just think the double dig through time is worth it and would probably still win you the game. Is your experience different and that's why you didn't go for those lines, or you just don't have the sample size yet?
I guess I don't have the sample size, but it's I think it's also a bit dependent on the matchup. Because if you for example against like Burn, I had one game where I didn't go for it because my opponent could have just bounced it if he has the Viper or however it's called,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would have been dead.
Mm-hmm.
So there are spots where you just die if a Traxxas gets bounced. I think that's the spots where you have to be careful.
Mm-hmm.
But I also agree with you that I don't have enough reps with it. Um, so you can be you underestimate the value. So in games where you don't lose if the attractor goes away in the turn, you're probably correct. So I don't
Yeah.
have much reps with it.
Yeah, I think if you were to play this deck going forward, I think I mean I guess that's a spoiler, but I think will definitely try to get more events for this deck. I think I would try if I were you to see how you like going for Traxxas when you just have 4 mana, or if you want to play around days 5, depending on the board situation. But my experience is barring misplay, and granted you can misplay, but barring misplay, in most circumstances, Atraxa would probably still win, even if they handle it. But that's not foolproof, but that's been my experience for the most part. I think
Yeah,
moving
sure.
on. I think moving on though. I think this is kind of a topic I also really wanted to pick your brain on your event. Um, how did the Bowmasters feel for you? Actually, before I move on, I want to quickly go over Roberto's response. His was pretty straightforward. He just said don't play bad cards. So like he registered, I think like under Mountain Adventurer. He because he very situational cards that dealt with situational game states. So he said he thinks that was just too cute, like things like under Mountain Adventure, Annoy with Affliction, Crime Punishment, or like along those lines. For instance, he
Yeah.
probably wouldn't play any Dismember over Snuff Out.
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. Like
Uh-huh.
Underworld, the Adventurer, I think, is an interesting card. And
Mhm.
it certainly is a powerful card. I wouldn't say it's a bad card.
Uh-huh.
But I guess the situation where you want it are also the situations where Fiend Artisan and Grist are probably at their best, so you just can go for these cards instead and just cut the 4 drop, which can be awkward in other times.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of how my take on it too, because Fiend Artisan and Grist are just overall good cards, whereas the other ones like more situational.
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so here's a point where I think the or the Fiend Artisan community may be mad at me going forward. But how did you feel about Orcish Bowmasters and the two quantity that you played?
So I think two felt like the correct number to play. So you don't want to have much more because you don't want to have them stuck in your hand, and also they at some in some games they don't further your game plan very much.
Mm-hmm.
So they are good for your cradle, but you can sack them into the natural order, and they're just 1/1. So there are situations where they're not the best of card. But I had 2 games where I could play them against in response to a brainstorm, which
Oh.
always feels great. One game was against Blue White Control, and he resolved the brainstorm and just instantly scooped. I think he was brainstorm locked and maybe had only cantrips in his hand. Um, so I think playing 2 is correct. It was also I had the match against the Elf stack,
Uh-huh.
where game 1 I played Fiend Artisan turn 2 into Orcish Bowmasters into Orcish Bowmasters.
Mm-hmm.
So it was I think very relevant to have 2 of them in the deck,
Right.
just to even more ensure they couldn't go combo off. So I think I would play 2 again. I wouldn't play more, but I probably wouldn't cut one either.
Gotcha. Yeah, the reason why I asked is, yeah, I've never played more than two because it just never felt like I wanted another black card that was very reactive.
Yeah, right.
But I have been experimenting, well, lately with one, and even just the other day, zero, because I wonder if we can do better. Because in the matchups where it is good, outside of maybe something like Combo Elves, there are some other cards that are better. So, for instance, it tends to be good against these tempo decks, but I think additional mana dorks. I think you only played six. I've I've been experimenting with just a full set of eight hierarchs. Something to either for you to respond to now or going forward, I guess.
Yeah, I think more mana dogs is not a bad idea. They are always good. I also got in Prague at the vendor. I got two other hierarchs. So I have the full 8 set in case I want to play them. But I didn't have the two more to play, and I didn't want to make such a significant change, I guess, to the deck shortly before the tournament. So I didn't choose. Chose not to play them. I think also a card which could be interesting instead of the hierarch would be the Hobbit. The I'm not quite sure how
Oh, the
what is
halfling.
called the halfling. Yeah, the halfling because it has the two toughness, but overall it's probably just a worse card than the hierarchs.
My
It's better against
experience
bowmasters.
is the concerns you have with gemstone caverns apply to the halfling.
Yeah, right. That is also doesn't make. I mean, I guess it's nice. It casts grief, grist, not grief. I always confuse the toes. It casts grist, uncounterably turn two, and also casts the get a teak from your board. But I
Mhm.
guess the noble hierarch does it as well. So
Right. So
yeah,
I guess to just to clarify for the chat here, it sounds like you knew that my latest lists were experimenting with a hierarchs, but you just didn't want to make the change so close to the event. Is that accurate?
yeah, right. And I didn't have the two additional noble hierarchs with me, so that's also a reason. And I didn't want to scurry for cards close to the tournaments. It's always a lot of stress to ask around if someone says cards, and I guess I just could have gotten them on Friday at the vendor, but I was quite happy with the list, I guess, and yeah.
Mhm. No, that makes
So
sense. Like you didn't want to have the extra stress, and then it was kind of nice that the decision was already kind of made for you. Like it was a good sign.
yeah, right.
Okay, I think on let's compare it to Roberto's response. I think this long story. I think this is where you and him probably differentiate a little bit. He did not like Bowmasters actually going into the event, but then liked them afterwards and is considering playing three. I don't think I would ever play three just because of the mana issues and the liabilities that that presents. So I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
agree. I agree. That is, yeah, I had games where I couldn't play them on turn two. It's not so uncommon to not have black mana,
mhm.
and then if you have two black cards in hand and don't have the black mana,
You probably just
it's
lose.
horrendous.
Yeah. Okay, next question. Okay, how did your sideboard feel, and would you make any changes?
Yeah. Like I answered, I'm not really the right person to ask it, I guess, because I A didn't have a concrete sideboard plan,
Mhm.
and B I think for a tournament like this, it's always a bit of a toss up. So I think Thought Seizes, Snuff Out, and Force of Vigor are good for sure. So they I wouldn't change. I think they are pretty much set for the deck.
Mhm.
Then the Gadocteek I didn't get to use very much, so maybe I was just wrong not boarding it in some matchups. I'm not sure if I should have boarded it in against elves.
Mhm. I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, I figured. So it's a toss up because it hurts me as much as it hurts him, and the combo elf stack doesn't even really need their Green Sun Zeniths and natural orders to win the game. They can just go like Glimpse of Nature, play the whole board, and
Right.
then just hardcast the behemoth. So I don't really, it doesn't help me as much, and in the end, it can hurt me very much if I had it in. And I could have bought it in against Initiative,
Mm-hmm.
but I only thought about it afterwards, and I think would have been a horrible choice to do that. So I'm glad I didn't do it
Mm-hmm.
because they can handle it, and also it hurts myself much more. And fourth arrow lingers is not really that big of a deal against us, I guess. So sure you can lose to it, but if you manage to build up a board, it shouldn't be really much of a problem, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Then the only matchup I really bought it in was blue-white control. There, I think it's fine because it prevents playing chase and much more importantly, prevents playing the terminus.
Mm-hmm.
But other matchups, I didn't have any other matchups where it would have been relevant unless I'm missing something. Then the next cards are the two pithing needles.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if I would have played against the Dark Depths Thespian Sage matchup, it would have been decent. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have one of those. And I also thought against Painter it would have been very relevant, but
Mm-hmm.
also didn't play against those. So I only bought them also in against blue-white control to prevent their planeswalkers, and I didn't have any other matchups I bought them in. So I'm not quite sure how relevant they were or how relevant they are to play in the sideboard. Depends on the meta. I
Mm-hmm.
think in Magic Online it's probably much more clean cut what cards you should put into your sideboard because the meta is much more defined in Magic Online than in a big tournament in paper.
No, I think
Uh,
I've. Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
uh, and the last card is the Mindbreak Traps, which were last minute edition the day before. I wasn't sure what to board the Cable Pit in, to be honest, and didn't have a Terra Thunder.
Uh-huh.
So that's pretty much the reason I played the two Mindbreak Traps. I figured you pretty much always play against Storms in such a big tournament. I didn't, but I always expect to play at least one Storm deck because there are many players who enjoy playing Storm, and the chances to be paired against one is not so little. So that was pretty much the reason. It also wasn't very relevant. I boarded these in against Doomsday, which I think is fine. The Doomsday opponent also said it's okay to board them in.
Mm-hmm.
And I boarded one in against my match against Reanimator, where I was on the draw, but I
Mm-hmm.
only boarded in one. So my reasoning for this is it's good if they go for an unfair turn one,
Mm-hmm.
but afterwards it's just dead against them because they don't need to play more cards. So I just thought I play the one to have one more cards to interact if they go for a turn one kill, but it didn't came up because they kept horrible hands.
I think your reasoning is sound. I personally don't like Mindbreak Trap against Reanimator either, but I think given your list and just needing more interaction, I think your idea is very sound, and I think that's reasonable. Um, I think Roberto's response is pretty similar to yours. I think the only difference, essentially, long story, just play the good cards, right? I think the only
Yeah.
difference he had was he wasn't a fan of the mind break traps, but I actually think, given that the meta turned out the way it was, Storm was actually pretty popular. I'm not sure if that's a a Europe thing, but you could have easily paired against Storm, and Mindbreak Trap would have been decent. It's also decent against Doomsday, as you mentioned. So
Yeah, it's
I don't.
also my experience in large legacy events in the past that Storm is always a known quantity you can play against.
Do you think that is a European thing, or because it's funny because at least in the U.S. here, anytime I bring up the card Mindbreak Trap or Chalice of the Void, I get mixed reactions because at least American players don't seem to have Storm on the radar as much.
Yeah,
But
so I guess it's hard for me to say because I don't know how it is in America, but maybe people in Europe like doing math more or the counting more that goes into Storm. They more like the gameplay. I'm not sure about it, but it's like Storm is always a deck. I I know a dude who plays Storm, or yeah, you always see someone show up with a Storm deck. That's only my feeling, I guess.
Hmm.
But it was like what 3-4% of the meta,
It was,
or so.
I didn't look but at the exact numbers, but I saw it was a good amount, like at least, yeah, 3 to 4%, which is pretty high.
Yeah. So yeah, and I think the matchup is probably pretty bad for us.
I would
So
agree with
yeah,
that. Outside of mine, because as like Storm is one of the combo decks that gets to ignore endurance, and um, I think our weak spot is essentially combo fast combo that is ignored by endurance. That's my kind
yeah.
of read on the deck.
So I guess it was good to have him on my sideboard, but also I didn't play against Storm, so so I didn't really need them in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also not quite sure if they're correct to play. So don't take my list to Magic Online and expect it to be the perfect, because I think the overall makeup of the meta is just different, and you have to keep that in mind.
No, no, I fully agree. Actually, it's funny because online there's generally a lot more combo, and I see it feels like some of that seems to have translated over to to Prague, whereas I think uh, at least in past years at Eternal Weekend, I actually haven't been to a paper Eternal Weekend, and my only Eternal Weekend event was 2021, which is on the online one that I top aided and the one that Jurga won. I didn't play last year because of the time zone difference, but um, it seems like in at least North America, people are more scared of like Mirror Age based decks, whereas in Europe at least it seems to be that Storm is more popular. And I can't speak for what's happening in Japan. I feel like that metagame is a little bit more fair, but that's kind of my read on it.
Yeah. So I just find it strange that I neither played against a Meryl Age deck or a Storm deck. So lands and Storm are always two decks I expect to play against, but I didn't have to face either of them. And I guess that's lucky. The matchup lottery was very kind this weekend for me.
Mhm.
You always have to be lucky for such a big tournament if you want to do well. So without any luck, you can't do well. But yeah.
No, I
So
fully agree. I think it's a combination of three things I've always said. You have to pick a good deck, which I think our deck is good. I think you have to get lucky, like you mentioned, and then you obviously have to play at a pretty high level. You can't play perfectly, but I think proficient enough, and I think you definitely did demonstrate that on. I didn't. While I didn't watch, I from what I read, I understood that you navigated the different matchups pretty well. So that's kudos to you.
So I'm always also not quite sure who yeah, I've read the comments who watched me play all these matchups which I
Uh-huh.
played well. So someone commented on my good metagame knowledge. I'm not quite sure I would agree with that. So the first match I played against Initiative, I only saw I think Ancient Tomb, Plains, and Chalice of the Void, and thought it was Bomberman. Foolish me, so why would Bomberman play Chalice of the Void? Because
Uh-huh.
I think for everyone else it should have been immediately obvious it was Initiative.
Mhm.
So I remedied that after game two, and afterwards I knew the deck, but my metagame knowledge is not the best. So I know all the old cards and all the old strategies, I guess, but the newer decks, I'm not quite sure about them.
Mhm. I think we kind of already touched on this, but anything you would want to add in terms of like, I think it sounds like you're gonna play the deck going forward, but anything you want to add in terms of like what you want to test or what you're looking forward in terms of the deck going forward?
So yeah, I guess I will try out playing more Hyrox now. Then I have more, and
Mhm.
I will keep playing the deck, but that's not primarily because I think it's a good choice to play the deck, which I think, but that's not the reason I want to play it. I want to
Mhm.
play it because I think the deck is awesome to play, and I like the play patterns. That's the reason why I would keep playing it. And I would advise everyone to do the same, I guess. Play a deck you enjoy playing,
Mhm.
because if you're horrible playing the game, so why do you even bother playing Magic? So if the best deck to play is horrible to play, then play another game.
No, that's very fair. I think a lot of legacy players will enjoy that comment, that sentiment by you because they've already committed a lot of money to a lot of these decks, especially decks like ours that don't really have cards that can translate over to other decks real easily, like some of the blue decks, for instance. God's Cradle's really only played in our deck and Maverick. Uh, I guess to elaborate, I know you mentioned you like creature based decks or synergy decks. Is it because you like navigating, like, I guess, some of these complex board states and then being able to have a lot of decisions at hand, or is there something else about the deck that you enjoy?
Yeah, sure. I really enjoy combat math. I mean, yeah, I was an avid drafter in the past, and I think it's one of the most interesting decision points in Magic is having the combat math. So there are also some legacy players. So I've seen them. They are so horrible with playing creatures.
Uh-huh.
So they if there are more than two creatures on the board, they don't know what is happening. And it's always an edge to be good with your magic fundamentals, I guess. So if you don't know how to play combats, please just draft a bit, play limited. That would be
Mhm.
my tip for all the players who want to get better at combat math.
Mhm.
There you can see the interactions between creatures of different sizes and count up the clocks you have on each other so that you can get better as a game.
Mhm.
So I enjoy that really much. So I'm also a Hans Gaze player for modern, which I also enjoy. It has some similar gameplay patterns, I think, as this deck. I was a bit sad not to get to play it on Sunday, but I guess that's a fair trade-off for going top eight. So I can't complain too much about
I
it.
think
So yes.
I think most people would trade to be in your position with regards to the event.
So yes, and I also enjoy just playing decks that have a lot of decision points. I don't think that's the smartest choice if you want to go to a tournament, you, especially if it's a long one,
Right.
because having more decision points means you have more opportunities to screw up,
Right.
and it's much more difficult to navigate a long tournament because it takes a toll on your concentration. But I just enjoy playing a deck that doesn't get boring after 3 or 4 rounds. So
Right.
if you
There.
just want to play for a single tournament, I guess just pick Reanimator probably because it's a good deck where you can play short rounds
Uh-huh.
and you don't have as much room to screw up, and it's a very good deck, I feel. So yeah,
Uh-huh.
you can do well with it, of course. But if you want to have a deck where you want to have fun for a long time, then Cradle Control is a great deck to play.
That's a great endorsement. I need to have you put that on audio or somebody clip it here as an endorsement for this deck. But yeah, I totally agree with your sentiment. There's a lot of decision points, and I think fatigue in a long tournament is definitely a factor. I think it's definitely more taxing to play a deck like ours where there's more decision points. But I do agree, and actually something that I didn't think about was if you're gonna play more hierarchs going forward, I actually think that rewards some of the combat math advantage you have from limited. So you'll probably enjoy that. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, yeah, but also Hyrax makes combat, I think, a bit easier because you only attack with a single creature, and you don't even have the choice to attack with multiple Hyrax because they have 0 power. So yeah, it's like there are situations if they were like Llanowar elves, it probably would make the decisions more difficult, but also Hyrax are much better in power level, so of course you should play the Hyrax over Llanowar elves.
Makes sense. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, I guess in that way, uh, the pumping and the attacking with only one creature actually does make it easier. Maybe that's why I'm suddenly okay at combat math. I've never really drafted, but then I've been okay with this list, even though, like I said, my my experience with combat is somewhat limited, pun
Yeah,
unintended.
I guess if you play the deck enough, you also will become good with combat math.
I guess on the last question before we, delve into some of these extra questions is anything you want to add with regards to the event?
Yeah, just a shout out to all the amazing people that were there. It was really enjoyable. Most of my opponents were great people, and they all had their different fun decks. I really love to see decks I haven't seen for a long time. So, like when my opponent played his Phyrexian Dreadnought, I was so happy about it, just because I love seeing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also all around the tournament was amazing. There were a lot of artists, which I've never seen so many artists at a single event. It was like 6 or 7 artists, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That's also very nice. I got a really nice signature on my Atraxa now. Um, So that was amazing to see. The vendors were also great. And yeah, the only bad thing about the event I could say is that at the side, the food you could only pay in cash and only with Czech crowns. This was horrible
Oh,
because
really?
nobody has Czech crowns. Yeah, that was the only bad thing about the whole tournament, I could say.
Oh, I'm kind of surprised
And
by that.
yeah, normally at these events, everyone pays in euro because all the vendors and everyone is not from Czech themselves.
Uh-huh.
So the euro is the accepted currency, but then
Mm-hmm.
only to get the food you have to get Czech crowns. It's stupid.
Oh wow, yeah, I'm kind of surprised by that. That's unfortunate, but hopefully, future events will take note. If there anybody's listening out there, one thing I want to do as well is I want to highlight Robert's response to this same question as well. He actually the one thing that's different that he said was he didn't test as well, similar to you. He wishes he had, which seems to be kind of the difference between you and him in terms of testing. The other thing was I wanted to highlight Robert's response saying that he really wants to thank well myself, but then also Inigo, Jurg, and then Curran for putting this deck on the map and just the publicity that the, the, that the three pilots because I don't play much. I don't play really big events, but Jurg, Inigo, and Curran have done, and now yourself, with this top four finish at
Yeah,
Eternal
I
Weekend.
guess I guess I missed the sentiment. Thank you very much, Newton, because I followed you and the evolution of the deck, and also shout out to Rancor, which I guess I watch his streams more than yours because it's not in the middle of the night
Right, right,
when he
right.
streams. So yeah, thanks to you both. Yeah, I get to see the amazing content.
Hey,
Um, I guess I wouldn't say I wish I had to test it more because I don't like doing homework and I play Magic for fun. So
that's
so
completely fair. That's completely fair. And actually, since we're on the topic about the streams, I know one thing I've been trying to that I want to improve on. Obviously we're already towards the end of this month, and this calendar year has a little bit more about a month and a week to go. My New Year's resolution, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, is to improve the stream. And one thing is to not, for me, not to get flustered when the league maybe is not going well. Aside from that, do you have any, I guess, constructive criticism you want to give me that would make the stream more enjoyable for yourself, or if this is just in general for any streamer?
um, yeah, I honestly I can't think of anything right now. So to be fair, I don't watch your stream as much. So what?
Mm-hmm.
Let me say this. I watch. I like seeing your videos and watching them, but most of the time I don't have the attention span to watch the whole league and only see like 1 or 2 matches.
Gotcha,
But
gotcha.
that's a time constraint maybe, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, the attention span. It's Magic Online. Yeah, I guess it's not the nicest way for me to see Magic played.
Right,
It's
right.
all amazing that it exists because people can play at home, but
Mm-hmm.
it's much better to play in person. And yeah, that's. But I don't have any criticism for you, I guess.
Gotcha. I think I'll now open up the. There hasn't been any comments in Twitch chat, which is surprising. But if anybody wants to ask you any questions, or if you want to just elaborate on any of the other questions, or any, anything you care about, feel free to do so either on your end or Twitch chats. And so yeah, I'm gonna open up questions in case people are shy. But those were kind of the follow up questions to when I saw your responses, and I think it sounds like from a deck building perspective, you're pretty much aligned with a lot of the heuristics that went into the building of the 75. Then.
Yeah, also I also would agree with you shouldn't play bad cards in the deck. That's the thing about the deck in with which is different to the elf deck, that it doesn't play any bad cards, and the elf deck plays a lot of them. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, I
and
think I think
having
let's
good
see.
cards,
Oh.
having good cards is always good if the game gets long and awkward,
Mhm.
because then you top deck your cards, and if your cards are better than your opponents, you probably will win, and if your cards are worse, you probably will lose.
That reminds me. Lately, I've been experimenting with one gris. Do you feel that's a mistake, or do you? My logic was, I think in a world with leyline binding, trading up against gris, and the fact that gris is not even that great against Delver. Like it's good to kill Murktide, but that's about it. Like because it can be found. Is that crazy, or do you think that's reasonable?
Yeah, I guess it's probably reasonable against the matchups. Again, I didn't play any Delver and I didn't play any Beanstalk decks in the tournament, so I guess for my tournament I was very happy with two Grists.
Mhm.
But if the matchups would have turned out another way, I can see playing one grist being fine. So if you play a lot of initiative and opposition agent decks, I guess having two grists is better.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's always a question of what do you expect to see.
That's fair enough. Yeah, I think here I'm bringing up Roberto's list, and yeah, he was on the one grist. I think he said, yeah, don't play the bad cards. In his opinion, he played a few, right? Like Under Mountain Adventure, Anoint with Affliction, uh, The Crime and the Punishment.
What is
I
this
think
anointed with affliction? I
it's
don't
a
even know. Is it that's a removal spell with poison? So
it's
what?
a removal spell for Merit Lage, but he said it was pretty much a bad removal spell almost all the time.
Okay, isn't the green one better for 1 mana where the opponent has to sack a creature with flying? So,
It would be for Merit Lage, but I
or
think
mer-
the idea with this card originally was you could board it in against like Delver or well, I guess
against
uh,
Delver, I'd rather have the 1 mana spell, which costs
right,
green, I guess.
but this one can hit like Death and Taxes or like Painter, random things like
Okay.
that. But
Yeah, I mean,
yes,
it's fair against Painter, I guess. Against
but
Death and Taxes, I'm not even sure if you want to play our 2 mana removal spell against Death and Taxes, I think.
right because you're generally trading down.
Yeah, and if he has a Mother of Rune, it doesn't do anything. And I think our creatures are bigger than Death and Taxes. I haven't played the matchup, but I don't think having removal from our side is something you would even want there. So I wouldn't take it into consideration in as an um as a sideboard card. So yeah, sure against Metal Edge, but yeah, Anoint with Afflictions, it doesn't look good to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
No, I think. Go ahead.
Yeah, just having to read the card, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't look like a good
Yeah.
removal spell for me. So if you pay 2 mana for it, it's just too fair for Legacy to be a reasonable sideboard card for a deck like this. You'd much rather have something that is free. So I like a second Chalice of the Void, I guess. That's a card I kind of wish I had in sideboard.
Hmm. No, that's perfectly. reasonable argument. And I think, yeah, I think Roberto mentioned his regrets were just not playing the broken cards in the correct quantity. So I mentioned earlier, he wished he had played the 4 endurance main, and he
Yeah,
wished he had registered 4 snuff out.
yeah. And crime punishment, I'm not quite sure what that is for 8 cast, I guess.
It's the idea behind this card when I tested it was it's supposed to be good against the Saga decks, but it's actually a little more narrow than I realized.
Yeah, right, because it has to come down even in the correct turn. So Saga is only a 2 turn window for you to remove it, and it's a two mana card, so you have, yeah, you really have to play it at the correct turn for it to even do very much. I mean, I
Right.
guess it also kills the constructs, but with sorcery speed, yeah, it seems too narrow.
It's my issue when I play this card so far is it's funny because I got to crime one time a Fury out against Painter,
That's
which was
funny.
pretty funny. But for the most part, I found it to be a little bit more narrow because when I wanted to kill something with like CMC 2, 4 mana is just too much. And
Yeah, sure. You can't really do that. And then you also have the problem that you maybe have an own 1 drop at 2 drop at your side of the board.
right,
So I only would consider it for x equals 0 to be really a good option.
it's
So
really good
of course
against
you.
rhinos, ironically enough too.
Yeah, sure. That is fair. It's good against rhinos. I don't know how much of a consideration rhinos really is for the deck. I don't know how much of the meta game is made up by it. Um,
I consider this card in an open meta. I probably wouldn't play it. I think if your meta game is like of a certain flavor, like maybe a lot of rhinos, a lot of like saga, then it's probably reasonable. But probably so far testing the card has felt a little narrow.
Yeah, I think against Saga, I'd rather have more force of vigor. Would be my guess.
Hmm. I think, yeah, we haven't had any questions yet here on Twitch chat. Anything you want to elaborate on? If not, I think we can just call it a night, or in your case, morning.
Yeah, right.
Okay, I'm gonna give going once for Twitch chat. If they want to ask you any questions specific to your, actually, there was one thing you mentioned before we went online. You wanted to clarify something about that semifinals match.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
let you do that right now.
Yeah, maybe I just should address it. So I haven't played Rhinos in the past, so I really wasn't sure how to sideboard against it.
Hmm.
I boarded out the natural orders and their Traxer against it.
Hmm.
Um, I'm not sure if it should be done. I probably not. Probably the matchup is he is a bit too unfair, so I need the natural orders maybe just to also be unfair against him. That was
Hmm.
the one thing I didn't really consider. And in the final game, I think I had a good shot of winning, but there was a situation where I had a 4-4 Fiend Artisan on the board, and my opponent attacked with 2 rhinos my Grist, and I stupidly thought I could block with the Fiend Artisan, and it would grow to 5-5 and not die, which obviously is wrong. It was just my brain, yeah, skipping a beat, I guess. And then my Fiend Artisan died. I drew um, a Green Sun Seniors from the top, which could get another Fiend Artisan. So he had a Rhino, I had a Fiend Artisan. The board looked fine, but he top decked, and then I died. And I guess if I just had the other Fiend Artisan and he had a Rhino more, it would have been a lot better for me. So as long as he doesn't draw an endurance, I think the match is then the game is very winnable for me. And later in the game, he played 2 Grey Ogres on the board, so I guess I probably would have won the game. So it was a bad play on my side. So I just want to address it. So maybe I remember it myself and don't do this stupid mistake again for the next tournament. I always try to find all my bad plays. So my philosophy is there really are not um, very good or great plays. There is only the correct play, and then there are bad plays.
Hmm.
So sometimes there are minor inaccuracies which are not so important, but sometimes there are just these blunders, and that is it. That is the reason often you lose the game. I also saw some blunders from my opponents, so fair enough, but yeah. So you can't complain about losing a game after you blundered it away. I just wanted to address it before everyone anyone else
No,
does
that
so.
that
I've seen the bad play and I try to be better next time.
no, that's good. I like that attitude a lot. Like, usually I don't I don't know how much of the stream you've watched of me. Usually I'm pretty hard on myself. If anything, a little too hard, and I try not to blame the deck when I make a mistake. Same thing where, not to be results oriented when you're the one misplaying, right? Um,
Yeah,
regarding
correct.
regarding your question about how to board, I typically will board out only Atraxa and keep the natural orders in with the
Yeah,
buff
right. That's what I figured.
because again, like you said, the deck is a little too unfair for us to play fair. Another thing I do is I don't know if you did or not. I bring in both Snuff Out and Thoughtseize, and I bring out Endurance. And the logic is if they do play Inevitable Betrayal against us, I don't want them to take a Endurance and then just shrink all of our creatures.
Yeah, that is fair. I was pretty sure he wouldn't bring it because it was open deck list, so I saw the inevitable betrayal on the
Hmm.
sideboard and he commented on that, so sadly it's open deck list. So he
Hmm.
pretty much knew I would board out in Atraxa, bought out the Atraxa, so he wouldn't bring in the betrayal. And that reasoning would be, yeah, the endurances, but it's fair enough. But he had a playset endurance in the sideboard as well. And
Hmm.
as I played the game, I realized how horrible the endurance is for us to play against, because I think the matchup would be totally fine if he didn't have the endurance
Hmm.
and our creatures would just become the biggest on the board. So when our fiend artisans are 5/5 or so, he just wouldn't win. So game one, I pretty much won in that fashion. But
Hmm.
then when the endurances comes in, we can't rely on our creatures being the bigger ones. So
Right.
that's probably the reason why we need the natural orders.
Something I do too is, and you have to like kind of switch it up, is sometimes I will board in Atraxa game three if I see that they do not bring in betrayal. So that is
Yeah,
something for
sure.
you to
That's
keep in mind.
also something I thought about. But um, yeah, like I said, I bought it out the natural order, so having the Atraxa in didn't make any sense
Right, right. That makes
um,
sense.
without them. So, but yeah, I bought it out the natural orders for most of my blue matchups, and I thought it's like Delver, and I thought I bought against Rhinos like I bought against Delver, but I think that's probably a mistake.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
think
next time I play them, I try a different strategy.
against control, did you board out natural order as well? Because I actually like natural order against control.
Against Blue White Control, I bought it out, yes.
You did,
But
okay.
yeah, I guess for Atraxa, it's decent. But yeah, it's always a question because you open up yourself for getting two in one.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess it's also it was Blue White Control, so um there's a question Blue White Control as is I don't think has very much, so it doesn't trade as good against us like Beanstalk decks.
Hmm.
I think against Beanstalk decks, so I have not so much experience. It's much more I have a single match and try to theorize based on it.
Right.
But I think Beanstalk will probably just outvalue one so much that you need your natural orders
Right.
um, just to have the winning play. But I think Blue White Control doesn't outvalue so much because you can just win with a grist if it resolves because they have problems handling it.
Hmm.
And yeah, you can play a much more fair game. So they only have as card advantage engine like a chase, which is easily handled by Grist. And
Right.
yeah, back to basics, but I don't think back to basics is like the biggest problems for us.
We
So
can
it's
typically play through it, right?
yeah, right. And also Quirin Ranger is very fantastic in that in that situation.
No, that all makes sense. I think the big takeaway that I got from talking with you this tonight was that I'm really impressed with is you view, from my observation, each matchup kind of from a macro standpoint, and then you have a game plan, which not every Magic player does. I think it's, to me, my read is, you think about how the matchup looks like, what a win looks like, what a loss looks like, and then you evaluate from there. And I think a lot of Magic players just kind of cast cards, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, right. That's why also I think it's not as important. Like I said, I didn't have a sideboard plan, but I think
Mhm.
many players make the mistake of having their sideboard plan, take it with them, and then religiously follow it through the
Right.
tournament. And as soon as your opponent switches out one card from the deck you thinks he plays, it can totally differ the matchup. So your sideboard card doesn't hit him anymore, and or something else changes. He brings another silver bullet, and then your game plan falls apart. So um, it's good to have our sideboard plan, but it's also good to be flexible and deviate from it a bit if you if you want to do well.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
also, if your opponent knows your sideboard plan, he also can board against your sideboard plan. So that's also something you have to think about.
No, I definitely agree. I think one of the skills that I see that a lot of players who use my cyber plan can improve on is when the situations arise where your opponent does something strange. I think it is good to be flexible enough to deviate from the plan because your opponent is not playing the way you think they are.
Yeah, right. And I think that's something the really good players are excellent at exploiting. So having a bit of randomness in on your part may help against the real good players. So they don't know your next move.
Right, right. That's actually, I think, the reason why you'll see me, like, my sideboard. Like, I will often change a lot of the cards aside from the Thoughtseize and the Snuff Out because I don't want them to I don't want to be predictable.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, I think with that said, so Twitch chat, another, opportunity here to ask Simon anything you might want, or if you want to plug anything, Simon, the floor is yours as well.
Yeah, again, thanks Newton, thanks Ranko, and thanks the whole Cradle community. It was great to have the feedback from you guys and seeing all of you excited at my tournament results really warmed my heart.
Mhm.
So thanks for building the deck, and yeah, keep enjoying playing this awesome deck. And if you enjoy playing anything else, that's fine as well. Keep playing Legacy as long as it is fun for all of us. It's amazing. It's the best format because of that. Yeah, and have a great time playing Magic, and don't get frustrated if things don't go your way. That's also Magic at some point. Just have fun with it, I guess.
Now that's a great attitude. I think if there's no request here, I'm gonna go ahead and raid Drop Dead Gaming, and then I really appreciate you taking the time to come on to answer these questions. I'm sure a lot of people who are either new or old to the deck will appreciate your responses and the thought you put into my questions.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, I'm gonna start the raid right now, and then we'll be offline in a second.
Good night, everyone, or good day, or whatever.
All right.